And welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Emilio Danello, the Fulham Shadow. We are just about 23 minutes left of the transfer window, Emilio, and we're going to talk about what's been going on with Fulham in this January transfer window up until the end, and we're going to go a little bit over that. We'll also have a follow-up show tomorrow to see if anything has happened after we went off, and we also are going to be doing basically a review on the summer transfer window. We're going to look at all the signings and basically say hit or miss. I thought that would be fun to look back at the summer transfer window. We're going to be doing that tomorrow, but we're going to finish up this transfer window by just talking about what's been going on today, what's been going on with the window, Emilio. So your thoughts on what's been going on today. We'll talk about the signing of Sasa Lukic in just a second, but just give me your thoughts heading into the final stages of this window. I'll just ask you the question. Are you happy or disappointed so far?
Not surprised. There's probably I'm sitting at hedging my bets here, to be honest. I said, I'm not saying slightly disappointed. I think maybe there was a couple areas we could have upgraded, and there's areas of we've been banging on about a bit of covering all these positions. We want to make sure we've got key cover in all those positions. I think Lukic is a very good signing. There's definitely an upgrade, a significant upgrade from the guys that we had there as backups on the bench. But look, I think we seem like we're safe this year, right? I think I'm not tempting fate here. We're almost safe. Yep. There's an element of you can afford to not take risks now. Wait till the summer, rebuild, see where you land. One or two players on the verge may need to get their contracts extended beyond the summer. I think there's a lot of wait and see here. If Fulham were in a much more precarious situation, we probably would have seen a lot more activity. We've been linked with Suarez for the last God knows how many weeks. That still hasn't gone through.
Possibly, the entire window.
It may go around there. But I think that for me, it's if you don't need to panic buy, don't. Invest more wisely in the summer. Buy enough to just keep you pushing along and ticking along. I'd like to see a bit of a cup run. So again, it's having depth there. There's a lot of games thick and fast over the next few weeks, so cover is critical. We've got, I said we're playing Chelsea on Friday. Sheffield, Sunderland next Wednesday. Then we've got Forest on Saturday. The games are coming in thick and fast. So, a lot of fans would like a cup run, and there's a favourable, last 16 cup tie if we can beat Sunderland to qualify. So I'd like that to be prioritised, as well as obviously just continue to play the good football we have. But there were signs recently that we're starting to look a little bit tired. A little bit, injuries have crept in. Players are looking a little bit tired. There's a risk that we might slightly slip down the table, which won't be a surprise. I think most people, will still be pleased that A, we've survived, and B, we can achieve a top half finish. But slightly disappointed. Maybe we didn't get a couple more reinforcements just to keep pushing along, keep the dial moving. But like I said, let's wait till the summer. More money, more players. You can have got more time to focus rather than panic buy. I don't think we have to panic buy per se. I think that's the key thing. Unlike previous seasons in the Premier League, where we're all wanting strength in depth to keep us up in the Premier League, and we didn't buy the players that we wanted. So I don't think many fans will be surprised what we're seeing.
Okay, my friend, good stuff. All right. Forgot to mention this as always, and the numbers on YouTube keep going up with the subscribers, so please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. It does help other Fulham supporters find us. Okay, my friend, let's start with the good news. Fulham have officially signed a few hours ago Sasa Lukic from Torino in Italy, and he is a teammate of Alexander Mitrovic on the Serbian national team. He's a central midfielder, Emilio. And reportedly, Peter Rutzler is reporting that the fee is £8 million, and he signed until 2027. So it's a decent amount of time, and it's not a huge amount, but it's a decent amount. So what are your thoughts on this signing? What does it tell you? I think that this is more of just cover. I think he might contend with possibly Harrison Reed to start along in that midfield three. Maybe this is more competition rather than cover. I'm not 100% sure if this is just cover or an upgrade. Your thoughts?
I thought they said the good news is that Chalobah and Onima both moving on. I think
we're going to talk about that in a second. We'll talk about
look, two players have left the club. And at the end of the day, we've got so look, 2 average to low performers at the club have left. They've moved on to pastures new, and we have got a significant upgrade in Lukic. I've seen a few videos of him in the last few days as we've been linked and speculation around his signing. Definitely an upgrade. I've said, my views on Harrison Reed. He does a job. He does a job. He plays to his strengths, right? And I've said it to Steve Reynolds when I was there at the game on Saturday against Sunderland. When these players aren't playing to their full potential, they're offering very little else, is what I'm saying. So Harrison Reed does a job, grinds, he battles, he works his socks off. But when he's not at his full capacity, it feels like we've got one less player on the pitch. And that's the same with other players. And the same. So some of these players are punching above their weight. I said that on Saturday. And for me, Lukic, international player. Obviously, with the Mitrovic backing there there was a recommendation to come and join the team. He played in all the World Cup games, didn't he? So again, I know Serbia got knocked out in the qualification group, but notwithstanding that, he still played those 3 games. It's definitely an upgrade. I think we have been a little bit weak in that position in recent weeks. We've created little. We haven't scored many goals. We've scored one goal in 3 games since the Chelsea victory. So, look, if he's fit and can come and start straight away, then yes, he's going to keep the likes of Harrison Reed, the Tom Kearneys who comes on normally for cameo appearances in the second half. This could be the end of Tom's career at Fulham. You never know. So it's we talk about Harrison Reed. He's going to have to fight for his place, and this guy seems to offer a lot more quality from what I've seen. Different type of player.
Yep.
But technically, he's better. He's stronger, and we have to start building and strengthening and not carrying players on the pitch when they're not playing to their full potential. And that's what I mean. Some of these players have done a great job this season. They've punched above their weight, but when the chips are down and the team isn't clicking, some of these players of ours are maybe not. How would I say? They're not going to take us to the next level. I'm afraid that's the bottom line. If the club wants to be challenging for consistent Premier League survival year in, year out and pushing on season by season, a bit like Brighton, there's going to come a point where some of these players we've got a soft spot towards may need to start moving aside and we start to attract probably international quality. So it's a great signing. It's a significant upgrade to what we've got, and it will keep Harrison Reed and Tom Kearney on their toes, to be honest.
And I think that's good. And I think he offers something different as a box-to-box central midfielder, Emilio, based on what I've watched, what you've watched, what I've read. He is different than Kearney, different than Reed, and a different option for Marco.
Yeah.
Mattering on who Fulham are playing, maybe he goes with Lukic instead of Reed. Maybe, again, instead of Tom Kearney coming off the bench. Who knows? But I think based on what I'm seeing, this is a player that's not just for the now, Emilio. It could be a player for the future. So I think this ticks both of those boxes, meaning it's not just happening for this season. I think it goes way beyond that. So I think that's good. Also, let's transition and talk about the players that are leaving, because I think this is an upgrade over that. So you were talking about Nathaniel Chalobah. Now, listen, I wish him all the best of luck. Let's just talk about this, because you're bringing in Lukic and Nathaniel Chalobah, and we'll talk about Josh Onum in a second. They're both leaving. And I don't know how you feel. Hopefully, Nathaniel Chalobah has a good stay at West Brom, and I wish him only the best. But this is a significant upgrade based on everything I'm seeing over him. And because I don't think Nathaniel Chalobah was close to featuring with Fulham. Same thing with Josh Onum.
Yeah, and you look at those players, what are they? At the end of the day, they've had their moments, not always positive, but Chalobah was brought in with a specific objective when he, when he was in the Championship. He worked with Marco Silva before, and he was there maybe as cover, never to be a starting 11 player. He played a few games in the Championship last season. He actually started off quite well, if I recall. I think the autumn of
he did.
He started well. I remember you were complimenting him in this performance and saying that if he carries on at that level of quality, then
Birmingham City, he played very well. I remember that well.
But then it didn't quite work out for him. He got a little bit out of favour. Performances weren't up to scratch, and he was very much a bit part player. And same with Josh Onum, a bit of injury last season, didn't really figure in the Championship. And to be honest, they're not really Marco Silva type players, right? It's the type of football we want to play. These guys are safe, unattractive, uninspiring players who will probably do a reasonable job at wherever they've moved on to. So Chalobah's gone on to West Brom, and Josh Onomah, I'm sure, will find another club in the Championship that he can play week in, week out and offer something to them. But, Fulham Football Club wants to continue to progress and stay in the Premier League. Like I've mentioned earlier, we have to put our loyalties aside. These players have done a job where they've had in the past. They have to move on, and we have to keep pushing up the table. We have to keep, like Brighton do, keep looking at Brighton, Crystal Palace. They've stayed in the Premier League, 9-10 years. Crystal Palace, rarely threatened with relegation, so they're doing something right. They have low turnover of players, but each year they're building and strengthening, more money, better quality, and it's becoming more challenging to stay in this Premier League than ever before. So to keep competing, unfortunately, the average players are going to get found out very quickly. So, I'm not, Josh Onomah, other than the goal he scored against Cardiff in the playoffs, I'm not sure he did very much, to be honest. That's what I remember, the goal against Leeds United he scored. I think he scored before Christmas a couple of seasons ago. But other than that, had potential, didn't really see it. He was, again, a Scott Parker type signing, with his connections at Tottenham Hotspur, but didn't really get enough game time last year. So new managers come in. These players really haven't really figured and we're never really going to be good enough. So, yes, we've now got more cover on the bench. We've obviously got now Kearney, Reed and Lukic technically fighting for that other central midfield role. I think at the moment, it's a no-brainer who's probably the strongest of the three, but, they all have a different purpose. They're different style of play, and Marco Silva, I'm sure, will use them appropriately this season. But let's see how he adjusts as well to coming into Premier League. It may take him some time to find his feet and rhythm, but we've got a lot of games coming up in the next few weeks, so depth and quality are going to be key.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm just going to share some comments. A few from our friend Stephanie here. Says Chalobah has only made 6 appearances, has featured for 4 minutes since he was sent off against Newcastle. Good point. He also says Lukic, good signing. So those are some comments from our friend there. Let's see. This is from our friend Sean Kennedy. He says Lukic certainly more than cover. His numbers indicate he could represent real value, and he is longer term. That was my point, Emilio. And I think at some point Fulham have to move away. And I think they're in the process of doing this, turning over the squad when you have championship players that, as you said, that were more Scott Parker type players. Now we have to move on to Marco Silva type players. So I think that is a sea change where now you're bringing in a player like Lukic that I think suits more to how Marco wants to play. And nothing against the players that we just mentioned that are leaving, Onomah and Chalobah. I just don't think they fit into how Marco wants to play, Miller. So it makes sense to do this.
And they weren't figuring in the Championship last season, so that tells you the story. The team was successful. We scored lots of goals. They didn't have. There was no room for them, to be honest. And you're always going to need cover, especially at that level. But the likes of Chalobah and Onomah, no disrespect, are Championship players. They're nowhere near the Premier League quality that we need. And some of our players at the moment, like I've said, they've all done exceptionally well to get the club to where they are now. But some are really going over and beyond their levels of quality. Some are playing the best football of their lives, yet many of us were thinking they weren't more than a Championship type player. So fair play to Marco Silva, getting the best out of these players, but there'll come a point where some of the players that we love and see week in, week out are going to struggle to push on. I think many players have hit their peak, which is why now it's all about steady building, strengthening.
Right.
And I'm comfortable with not overspending in the January transfer window, but maybe a couple more signings wouldn't have gone amiss. I've always wanted another striker to back up Mitrovic. I've said that for 2 seasons now, 2-3 seasons. We haven't upgraded. It's unlikely we're going to upgrade. We'll have to make do with Vinicius, who can do a job, but clearly we're lacking something when he's on the pitch consistently. He's not really offering that much. And maybe some fullback cover as well. I think we'll talk about Kenny Tete cover for him. Suarez.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second.
Coming up, but overall, let's see. I think you're right, Stefan. Lukic will need, as I mentioned, he'll probably need time to adjust, playing a different brand of football in Italy. So we've got to give him time. But overall, it's all about building for the future. 4.5-year deal shows a bit of commitment from Fulham and trust, and believing this guy is going to be part of our long-term future, not just a player who's going to provide cover to keep us in the Premier League. The owners mean business here, and he's one player towards the strengthening of this club for the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely,
got to think long term here.
Absolutely. I'm going to share this comment from David Nicholson because there was a decent amount of speculation linking Fulham over the last couple of days, Emilio, to Sander Berge from Sheffield
Mhm.
United. So I want to just talk a little bit about this with you. Lukic sounds like a great sign. This is from David Nicholson. I'm not sure Berge was likely, mind you, 11 minutes to go, and he's not entirely convinced Blade's friends, according to a friend who supports them. But I've seen a good amount of speculation. It had Fulham willing to spend 20 million pounds on
Mm.
Sander Berge. Now, if you're going to do that, that tells me that you're looking to upgrade. If that didn't happen, well, obviously it doesn't look like it's likely to happen because I saw the speculation this morning that Sheffield United have made the decision to hold on to him. But regardless, if Fulham were in for him, I think that shows a little bit of ambition, Emilio. If they're willing to spend 20 million
Mhm.
pounds on another central midfielder, I don't think the two were linked, by the way. I think they were interested in both players, Lukic
Mhm.
and Sander Berge, separately. I think, again, this is just my opinion. I don't think they backed off because they signed Lukic. So if I'm right about that, I think that they do want to show a little bit of ambition, maybe not
Mhm.
too much, not like what's going on with Chelsea, my friend, down the street
No,
from
no.
you. It's a little bit out of control. I'm watching all of what's been talked about with Chelsea as we do this show live. It's insane. But I think that even if Fulham didn't get this player, if it was true that they were potentially in for him, they really wanted him, it shows a little bit of ambition.
Yeah, I agree with David in the sense that I'm not seeing overly flattering comments from Sheffield United fans about. I think
Yep,
he's Berger's been a bit hit and miss. I think it sounds like it's either someone you love or you hate. That's the
right.
impression I've got by reading a lot of the tweets and messages. 20 million was going to be it's a big investment when you don't. I wouldn't say technically need him. I think we've got Lukic, good
Yep.
deal, 4.5 years, international player. Do we need to be spending 20 million on Berger now when you may have more choice in the summer? When you don't need, we're not battling to survive in the Premier League. Is probably
No.
my point is. So it becomes less relevant and less appropriate to go and spend those funds on a player that's playing in the Championship at the moment, and you might be limited with choice because there's less movement of players in January. So I think it's a sensible financial decision not to push on with him. We've got Lukic. Don't be surprised you might get some other sort of lone players cover to add a bit more bench strength. We might see some news flashes soon, but it's other areas I would like to have seen a bit more transactional activity, like we've mentioned. I just think
Yep.
central midfield, we've got a lot of wingers. We have got depth in certain areas, but injuries are kicking in as well. And we've seen, without some of our key players when they're injured, at times we're not firing on all cylinders. So it's good to keep building, keep strengthening, and I'm not always an advocate of spending millions in the January window. That my view is if players are moving January, there's a reason why they're available in January.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
If you're out of favour, not particularly good, you're struggling to put, they become an asset or a tool for a club to come in and buy. But I always say good people will always be in jobs. So why are people available in January to move clubs? There's usually a reason for that. So I just think it sometimes it creates a wrong precedence to overspend in the January transfer window. It's more about reinforcing, strengthening where possible, but don't go over the odds and blow a lot of your capital. You wait till the summer to strengthen.
Okay, excellent stuff, my friend. All right. Coming up next, Emilio and I are going to talk about potentially a right back joining Fulham on loan. Okay, my friend, we are getting near
Mm-hmm.
the end of the window, but as we know, things can happen after the window closes. Before we went live, I have Sky Sports News right in front of me. I'm watching live, and they actually did a report from Hotspur Park talking about Cedric Soares and that nothing has been done yet. But it sounds like, based on what I've been seeing, that Fulham are close to signing him. In fact, I saw some reports that were reportedly Fulham are going to sign this player. We shall see. We shall see if they can get this over the line. Now, what I've seen, Emilio, what's been going back and forth on this is that was it going to be a permanent deal? Was it going to be a loan deal? Talking about his wages, I've seen reportedly Fulham are going to pick up all the wages. for Cedric Soares. Again, that is speculation that they're going to pick up all the wages. So if this does happen, Emilio, everything I'm hearing that it's going to be a loan deal. We're going to talk about what that would mean for Shane Duffy in just a second. But reportedly, both of these players are linked if Fulham sign Soares on loan. Your thoughts about this? Because they have been talking about this deal speculation-wise for the entire window.
Mm-hmm.
So it tells me that Marco really wants this player. Your thoughts?
At the end of the day, what I'm reading is all different speculation about the conditions of the deal. Sounds like it's a loan only, no option to buy, only till the end of the season, and you're paying him £100,000, probably making him the most expensive player at the club. Is that good? Is that a good investment? I just think at the end of the day, I'd rather invested in a player who's potentially got the option to buy if he performs well to the end of the season, rather than panic buying cover for Tete, who, to be honest, has had a great season, and and we miss him badly when he's injured. But yes, we're short of depth in that area, but it's a lot of money to pay, making him your most expensive player, and then you've got there's no condition there to potentially sign him longer term. I'm not sure it's the best business that we could be doing. I know we need cover in that area, but is that the only player available in the whole of the world to play right back to compete with Tete? It sounds a little bit bizarre that we've been chasing him for the last 6 to 8 weeks, and he's going to be the most expensive player at the club. But then who's going to be compromised? Do we let Shane Duffy go? Again, he's on what, 80,000, 90,000 pounds a week, one of the most expensive players, yet hasn't played one league game, to be honest. So it's a little bit. I'm a little bit beggars belief, really, scratching my head with this deal. I think he'll be a great asset. But for 5 months of football, then you hand him back to Arsenal. It just seems, I don't know, doesn't seem like good business. But then it's not my money; it's the owner's money. They want to do what they want. But I think we could have invested more appropriately and maybe scoured the European markets for players that are potentially there for the longer term duration.
What's interesting, Emilio, Fulham have been linked to, I kid you not, at least a dozen different right backs around Europe. But it all seemed to come back to Cedric Soares, which leads me to believe that Marco has something to do with this. Now, Marco has worked with him before, so maybe that's a factor in all this. I don't know. But it's obvious to me, based on where we are with this, that he was their number one backup for Kenny Tete. But again, like you mentioned, backup, right? He is not going to start over Kenny Tete. He's not, I don't think, being brought in to compete for the right back position. He's being brought in for cover. This is not an upgrade.
No.
This is cover to me. So like you said, if it's true, if the wage demands are true, it's a curious decision to go with that. But I think the manager, in my opinion, Emilio, if this does go through, which I do believe it will, that's just my opinion, that the manager had a lot to do with this.
Yeah.
That the manager is showing a little bit of clout here, that they're doing this for Marco, which in a way for me is a positive, that the Cons would do this for Marco. That's just, again, I don't have any proof that this is the reason, but that's what it seems like to me if I'm reading between the lines.
Yeah, clearly, we have been exposed in that area, and no disrespect to Bobby Reid, he's done an adequate job to cover in that position, better than Mbabu, for example. So the fact that Bobby Reid can play in that position in a more competently than Mbabu says something. But look, if it means Marco Silva has a bit more, can breathe a little bit easier, he knows that if Tete is going to get injured, and likely we might see him not figure a couple of games, he's likely to get an injury at some point, then Suarez is a very appropriate backup there, to be honest with you, and it will just protect that that right back position. But it just seems a little bit puzzling. Arsenal are not budging; they're not willing to give us the option to sign him. They just want him off their wage bill so they can fund other transfers that they've been making this transfer window. So overall, look, let's see what happens if we're signing him. Sounds like what I'm reading here from the listeners, it's more or less a done deal. Then
yes.
Then what happens to Dan James or Shane Duffy? Is one of them becoming a permanent signing?
I'm just about to get there, Emilio, because there's a report out there. Reportedly, if this becomes a reality with Cedric Soares, Fulham are then going to sign Shane Duffy permanently from Brighton. And there have been talks, again, this is speculation, with Brighton to sign Shane Duffy permanently. Now, they would be doing this, in my opinion, just to be able to get Soares over the line. So you have to ask yourself, is that the right move? Because now you're signing Shane Duffy, who has barely played for Fulham, but I don't think that you can do wrong having an additional center back, but he's barely played, Emilio. So for me, you're signing him just to make this loan deal happen. Interesting.
Yeah, and it will probably give Shane Duffy a 1-year deal, probably to the end of next season. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Probably, but again, we've not seen him. He's not been given any game time. To be honest, Tim Ream's been outstanding, and there's been no opportunity for Shane Duffy to play. I think he played one.
No.
Was it the Carabao Cup game at the beginning of the season against Crawley Town when he played, Chalobah played, and we were awful that night. So
awful.
He's a good backup, Shane Duffy. If there's ever to be any injuries or there was going to be a last minute signing off Tosin, there was speculation that Tosin was going to go this transfer window. That hasn't materialized. But
nope.
Look, for me, the only thing I see here is Marco Silva wanted Suarez. He's going to get that. And if we have to make Shane Duffy permanent to make that deal a reality, then, like you said, it shows the kinds of faith in Marco Silva and that what he wants, he gets.
Right. And Emilio, in a way, like I said, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I am saying that it shows me how much Marco has impressed the Cons to the point that they're investing in him, not just in the football club, but they're investing. They are now in the Marco Silva business, meaning they want to keep him around. I hope this leads to a longer term contract for Marco, but I think that they know what they have with Marco Silva. And I think this is a sign to me that they're willing to do what it takes, not just to hold on to Marco Silva, keep him happy, but give him what he wants. So he keeps on building Fulham to what they want. So for me, in a way, this is a positive sign that they're willing to go that extra yard for Marco. I do want to share this comment from our friend David Nicholson. Duffy is a puzzle. Expect to see a bit more of him. Understand he's been unwell, and Ream has been a revelation, which I suspect no one on this show anticipated.
True.
David, you're 100% right, because I thought Shane Duffy would have a chance, Emilio, to play and maybe play regularly, and he hasn't. That's because of Ream.
And look at Ream, whenever, on Saturday, we missed his leadership at the back.
Unbelievable.
35-year-old international, and we're bemoaning the fact that he's not playing in a cup tie because, Tim Ream now is one of the first players on that team sheet, which is ridiculous. Who would have ever thought that, like David just mentioned?
Yep, absolutely. All right, Emilio, we've gone past the transfer window deadline. It is done. I actually saw it wind down on my screen right in front of me. So we talked about doing about a half-hour show. So that's what we're going to do. But as we all know, deals can still happen, and they can happen for a while. But we wanted to do a show up until the end of the transfer window. And Emilio, before we wrap up this show, how are you feeling right now?
Look, there's a couple of disappointments. I think there's areas which clearly we're struggling to find cover for Mitrovic. I think that's been a 2 or 3 years, 2-year, 3-year problem. So disappointing that we still haven't bought no one as adequate cover in that area. Overall, we haven't panic bought, which is good. I'm glad to see that. You don't want to break the stability and confidence of the team. I think sometimes if you bring in too many players, it will disrupt the players who've done a good job to get them where they are. So I think there's also a psychological thing here as well. We've upgraded in key areas. We've released players who are not figuring and are not good enough at this level. So, thanks for their involvement in the Fulham Football Club, but they may as well go to another club where they can be put to better use. But think of the psychological element here. You suddenly bring in half a dozen new players. What's that going to do with a team that got you to 6th, 7th place in the Premier League? It's going to disrupt their confidence and morale. So we shouldn't overlook that. So we've upgraded in key positions. We haven't panic bought. And we've got one international player to add some depth in that central midfield. And the rest is as we were, to be honest with you. So I can see why we haven't gone OTT. And I think that would have been disruptive to the players and a kick in the teeth to a player that actually got you to 6th and 7th to then see a flurry of new players. So it's the right thing to have not gone OTT, but maybe there could have been a couple more upgrades. Wouldn't have gone amiss, to be honest with you. But it is what it is. I'm not overly disappointed. We've had a great season. We've got lots of games coming up. I want a cup run. I want to get to Wembley. So it's that's the priority for me, more so than weirdly than finishing as high up in the Premier League as possible. Because not often you get the chance to win silverware.
Okay, my friend. Before we go, I'm going to throw something at you that actually surprised me. Now, again, things can still happen. I know the window is closed, but deals can still happen. Like I said, and we will have a show tomorrow. We will review everything. But here's a curious one. Say they sign Cedric Soares the way that it's been reported on loan. What's going to happen with this player, Emilio? Kevin Mbabu. Now, we have not heard much speculation. We did about a week or two ago that he could be on the way out. So this is something to watch. If they do sign Soares officially, does that mean Mbabu is going out as well? So just another player to keep a watch as we go through the rest of the night and into tomorrow. And we'll have our answers tomorrow on Wednesday's show, my friend. But
absolutely.
Listen, your thoughts about this, because we're going to do hit or miss tomorrow on Cottage Talk when we look back at all the summer signings. I can already tell you this is a major miss. This is a miss, and I didn't see this one coming. But thoughts on Kevin Mbabu before we wrap this up?
I think if we were to do a poll now, or did one at the time, I think many fans were quite excited about this player when he first joined. I think we all expected, some quality there, maybe a little bit unpredictable, but clearly I think there were more pros and cons in terms of feedback. But clearly it hasn't worked out for him. He's had some horrendous performances, and it's the same with Kazawa as well. The 2 or 3 games he's played for the club, absolutely abysmal. He's been shocking, to be honest with you. And this is a guy who's played at the top level for the probably the most expensive and wealthiest club in the world. So it beggars belief, Sanders. But look, these players don't become bad overnight. Clearly, they're not adjusting either to the Premier League or to the way we want to play. We all make mistakes. The owner's made a mistake, and he's clearly not even in the squad, let alone as a starting 11 player. So clearly, he's totally out of favour. The best thing he can do is leave, but then clearly another club needs to come knocking on the door for him. You might see a potential loan signing there to the end of the season. He can add some value to another team rather than us having to pay that wage bill. So again, that may offset the Soares loan deal. So don't be surprised. We might see something there. One offsets the other, or partially offsets the other.
That's why I wanted to mention him at the very end of the show, because I think if Soares does sign, that Mbabu might be going as well, but only time will tell when we look back tomorrow on Wednesday, and we'll look back at what has happened in the January transfer window. And like I mentioned, we're going to go back actually through the summer transfer window. That should be fun. So Cottage Talk will have a transfer deadline review show on Wednesday. I hope you do watch and listen to the show, but we're going to wrap this up. For the Fulham Shadow, Emilio Danell, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, now part of the talkSPORT Fan Network.